data engineers, analysts, and producers. And for those of you wondering what those terms mean, a data engineer is someone who basically builds the infrastructure that the analysts use. So they take the data from TQ and they curate it, they enhance it, transform it, and put it into systems that then us analysts access, and we do our analysis. And the producers make sure we do our job. So this talk is going to have a couple of different parts, but I want to start by talking about cheaters and their effect on the economy. As I mentioned in the keynote, there has been a brand new team formed earlier this year, Team Law and Order. I'm not actually a member of Team Law and Order, so I haven't violated the secrecy of their membership. I just help them out occasionally. And this team, again, is focused on combating all forms of cheating. So you saw in the keynote, this year we've banned over 100 trillion ISK worth of assets and items from people who are cheating in EVE Online. No. But would you guys like to know what some of the assets we banned are? Yeah. That's good, because it's the next slide. So far, we have banned, just this year, 39 Titans, 156 supercarriers, almost 730 capitals, almost 4,000 skill extractors, over 13,000 large skill injectors, and 3.5 million plex. So we should work on that. So I want to talk a little bit about Sentinel. Sentinel is one of the tools that we use to detect people who are cheating in EVE Online in the actual game. The Tranquility server every day, it generates a whole bunch of log information. It generates this in a variety of different methods, raw log files, SQL databases, and what have you. And we have built a lot of hunters to go over all of this data. They go over it in real time and look at historical data trends for characters, and they look for detections. They look for people doing things that we don't think they should be doing. And they report these detections to the Sentinel system. And then the Sentinel system goes through all of these detections for each player, and it generates a rating of how likely we think they are of being a cheater. And your reports play into this rating. This is how the reporting system works. If you see someone you think is doing something bad, and this is if you think they're multiplexing, if you think they're botting, whatever, please report them. This will increase their rating, like our multiplexing users get thrown into this as well as people who we think are botting and other forms of cheating. Please report them. It will increase their rating, which means we get to them faster and we can verify what they're doing and get them out of our game. You can't use player reporting to grief. That's not how it works. If someone is not cheating, reporting them will multiply their rating of 0 by whatever, and their rating will still be 0. So it's not useful unless they're already doing something dodgy. As I said, we review these results and then we ban-hammer them. But we're constantly adding new detection methods, new hunters to this system, and refining our methods our existing hunter systems. But we also realize that this is actually a forever war. We're not going to get rid of cheating in EVE Online. We can't get rid of all the botters. It's just not possible. There's always going to be some incentive for these guys and girls getting out there and cheating, and we understand that this is not a problem that we can fix and then ignore. This has our full attention, and we consider combating cheating in EVE Online a core strategic goal of CCPs. And in fact, it's even a new player issue. It drives new players out of the game as well. So that's how we kind of work on detecting cheating, but I want to talk a little bit about why botting is bad. And the first thing I want to cover is inflation. So this animation shows the gross NPC bounties from total players for every single player, and then the red line that you see up there, that's from people who we're pretty sure, we're very confident are cheating, but we haven't got around to banning yet. You can quite clearly see the Sino changes, the red line there, and you can see sort of the proportion of the economy that is coming from people who we think we're pretty sure are cheating. In fact, it's around about 16% of the ISK that are just coming from NPC kills are coming from people we think are cheating. So if we just step back for a moment and we pretend that the only way of getting ISK is killing NPCs, which obviously it isn't, but let's pretend that. If you go and spend your hard-earned time and you kill a bunch of NPCs and you earn 100 million ISK, those cheaters are effectively devaluing that ISK by 16%. You would get the spending power of only about 84 million ISK. Now, this isn't a perfect analogy because there are other ways of getting ISK in EVE Online, and also people who are cheating are not just killing NPCs, they're also mining and getting LP and everything else. Interestingly, during Blackout, we saw the proportion of ISK coming from cheaters drop to around about 5%. Now, the second big reason that we think we want to get rid of cheaters in our game is around fairness and income inequality. And income inequality actually extends beyond the war against botters and cheaters in our game. But let's talk about fairness really quickly. The same reason that we banned multiplexing in EVE Online is why we're banning botting. We don't think you need to know how to set up a botting program or purchase a botting program or use ISBoxer to play our game. We want our game to be accessible to everyone, and that's why it's against the EULA. But we can explore the income inequality side of this a little bit by looking at the effect that Blackout had. We learned so much from Blackout. So this particular animation is looking at the total time that suspected cheaters are spending in EVE Online. And we can see there's quite a big decrease there, obviously, over the Blackout period. But it doesn't have as big a decrease as you saw previously when we look at the gross ISK coming from NPC kills. So obviously a lot of cheaters are not spending their time killing NPCs, or they're doing it less efficiently during the Blackout period, but we know that some of them are mining and getting LP and what have you. This particular animation shows the mean daily character bounties. Now, in this data set, we've restricted it to just looking at sovereignty nullsec, and we're looking at any character that killed an NPC in that day, and then looking just at the mean for people who we think aren't cheating versus people who we think are cheating. So as you can see, the red line there is showing cheaters again, and we can see that on average, those players are making somewhere around the 350-odd million ISK per day, while regular players are only making around the 120 million ISK per day, on average. The red line there is also where the Sino changes came in. And this big dip here is actually when skills for kills came into the game. What that is a whole bunch of players are getting out there and killing NPCs, but they're only killing 1 or 2, so the average is getting dragged way down. And you can even see that starting up around October 19 when skills for kills came back in as well. Sorry, 2019 October, not October 19. But this doesn't tell the full story. We can see that the mean is much lower for players, and we can also see there's quite a big drop in the player section there when we introduce the Sino changes. So why don't we go and have a look at the number of NPCs killed by various ship types. So we're just using sort of meta groups here. The white line there is obviously the total number of NPCs killed. The red line is the number of NPCs killed by subcapital ships. The yellowy goldy line is supercapitals, and the orangey line is just capitals. So to start with, again, you can see the effect of the Sino change when most coalitions with supercaps said, hey, you can't rat for supercaps for a couple of days, and then they fired back up. But what you can also see is if you look at the change, the average change pre-Blackout and during Blackout with subcapitals, it's around about 35%. So subcapital NPCs decreased by 35%. Meanwhile, supercapital kills only decreased by 25%. Like supercap pilots were just less affected by Blackout. This is actually a bigger effect than this particular graph shows, because this is also showing NPC kills across all of New Eden. It's not just looking at sovereignty nullsec kills. So presumably Blackout wouldn't have affected you for your mission running in HiSec. Well, at least I hope not. Maybe we should explore this income inequality issue just a little bit more. So we're going to actually do that by going back and looking at botters. This particular graph is kind of a weird one, and I'm going to need to explain it a little bit. But what it is it's looking at NPCs killed in sovereignty nullsec. It's looking at the NPCs that were killed by people we suspect are cheating. And it's looking at how much each one of those characters made per day. And then it's ranking them. It's looking at the entire period from quarter to all the way to now, and it's ranking them. So it'll say player 1 killed 10 million's worth of NPCs, player 2 killed 1 million's worth of NPCs, and it'll rank them all the way down. And then it splits them up into even deciles, or even groups, 10 different groups that all have the same number of NPCs. And then it gets the average amount that one of those players would have made in the game. Which is all very interesting. You're saying CCB larrikin, but what does this mean to anyone? Well, what you see there is a very even distribution. So the bottom group there, the bottom 10%, the least successful cheaters, basically, are making around about the 30 million a day on average, while the second top, is making about 671 million, and the top is making almost a billion ISK on average per day. But this is a nice even distribution, and you would expect that, because these people aren't ratting for the same amount of time. Some are ratting for less, some are ratting for more. But what's more interesting is when you compare this same distribution with the distribution of people we don't think are cheating. So this does the same thing. It's looking at the same group of NPCs being killed in sovereignty nullsec. We filter out everyone that killed less than 10 million ISK worth of NPCs. We don't care about those guys. They're either not engaging, or they got interrupted, or they're actually mining, or they're just killing the odd NPC. But what you do see here is we don't have a nice linear distribution. These are regular players like you and me. Instead, we see an exponential increase. The people who are most successful at ratting, and we don't think are cheating, are making much, much, much more than the bottom 10%. In fact, the bottom 10% on average are only making about 7.6 million. The top 10% are making 650 million ISK on average per day. This particular animation is looking at that same data, but a historical view. And instead of breaking it up into 10 deciles, which would make the graph a little bit busy, we're just breaking it up into 4 quartiles. So the yellow is the top quartile, the most successful people who are PvEing, killing NPCs. The dark green is the bottom 25%. And you can see the effect that Blackout has on them, where you can see the effect the Sino changes. So these most successful people, unsurprising to anyone, are probably flying super capitals or capitals. That's not a particularly surprising issue. But what confirmed our earlier findings is exactly what the change was when we look at the decrease in the amount of average ISK these people are making. If we look at the top 25%, the most successful PvPers out there, Blackout only on average affected them by minus 12%, 12.6%. And this includes the period when the Sino changes came in, before the capital NPC rating sort of spiked back up. But we look at those least successful 3 quartiles, and it's anywhere from minus 36 to minus 43%. It's pretty clear that Blackout didn't affect everyone evenly. Now, I'm not a designer in EVE Online, and I know this is a really difficult task. And my job, well, my goal here today isn't to depress you by telling you about income inequality in EVE Online. My job is to inform you. This is a serious issue that we need to address. And we need to start a conversation with you, the players, about this. This is a new player issue. People who start playing the game need to be able to compete with existing players. Existing players need to be able to compete with the mega wealthy, or the people that hold all the power as well. We need creative destruction in our universe if it's going to be fun. But I'm going to move on from that to something perhaps a little bit more fun now. I'm going to leave the economic side behind